Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and sorry for not uploading last week. It's weird, I uploaded The Last of Us Remastered 2 weeks ago and then just blacked out for a week. But that was then and this is now. And this week, I'm looking at the PlayStation exclusive Marvel's Spider-Man, and its spin-off Miles Morales, released in 2018 and 2020 respectively. Believe it or not, I had this review scheduled for this week long before No Way Home's release date was revealed. It was just a happy coincidence. But Spider-Man is a character that needs no introduction. With 2 successful film trilogies, 1 successful film duology, animated shows, and the only Marvel character that could compete in a popularity contest against any of DC's heroes before the MCU. However, Peter Parker had never had a really successful video game outing. It's really a problem that plagues Marvel as a whole, but Spider-Man was the worst offender, as he had countless movie tie-in games and less than spectacular original outings. Then, Marvel decided to reach out to Insomniac Games, developers behind Spyro the Dragon and Ratchet & Clank, fresh off the success of their Xbox One exclusive Sunset Overdrive, to develop a wholly original story in its own world, not tied into or depending on anything else. Releasing on September 7th, 2018, the game would essentially be regarded as the Marvel equivalent to the Batman Arkham games. It was praised for its story, design, and gameplay, being the most immersive and accurate Spider-Man experience. So let's swing into action and give it everything we've got! The game opens with a very expository long shot that shows that this game won't be an origin story, as Peter is already Spider-Man and has encountered many of his popular villains like Electro, Scorpion, Kingpin, Rhino, and Vulture. This Peter Parker is voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, the voice of characters like Marth from Fire Emblem, Yosuke Hanamura from Persona 4, and Toby Nevins from Catherine. He hears a police dispatch to Fisk Tower. Wilson Fisk is the real name of the Kingpin, and he suits up. He jumps out of Peter Parker's apartment window in full costume, which seems reckless for an experienced Spider-Man, and we get our first instance of this game's incredibly smooth transitions from cutscene to gameplay. They don't happen all the time, but when they do happen, they're really cool. He contacts police captain Yuri Watanabe, who tells him to take out some of Fisk's men in Times Square. Because if you have a mostly 100% accurate reconstruction of New York City in your video game, there are only a few places you're going to choose to start it. Peter also gets a call from his mysterious boss, and my second favorite raccoon, because Peter Parker isn't Peter Parker if he isn't barely holding his life together. Though Peter's too busy with this game's amazing web-swinging action and equally silky smooth combat to go to work. And if Peter Parker can be both Spider-Man and hold a job, maybe you can get off your lazy ass and stop collecting unemployment, huh? This is where the main comparison to the Arkham games comes from, as this combat is addicting. Spider-Man bounces around between enemies and integrates his webs for extra effectiveness. There's an explosion at Fisk Tower, and Peter swings into action to beat up more goons that only totally innocent men have, and traverse the first of the few great action set pieces in this game, as most of the game just takes place on rooftops. He breaks into Fisk's office and makes a very important distinction.
Don't forget the hyphen between Spider and Man.
Leading to a very tough, extended, and dramatic boss fight for what is essentially the prologue of the game, ending with Fisk's arrest. Roll credits!
Idiots! I'm the one who kept order in this city! 1 month! In 1 month you'll wish you had me back!
Huh, well, I think you see where this is going. Also, there's a character bios page in the menu screen, along with a social media feed that I won't really be talking about, but it updates as the game goes on and provides a great insight into how the game's events are viewed by the regular citizens. Now that Arachnaman is done taking down the big boss of New York crime, it's time for him to clock into work. Good old Otto Octavius, always a stand-up guy that lives an uneventful life. Otto's machine malfunctions just in time for his main financial backers to show up, because the only scientists that exist in comic books are desperate scientists running out of time and money. While Otto tries to persuade people to back him like a YouTuber with a Patreon, Peter works on fixing the prosthetic arm, and, well, at least there's only one of them. There's a bunch of mini-game puzzles that you can solve in here, and more are unlocked as the game progresses, though it's just 100% stuff. He gets a phone call from Yuri asking him to swing by the police station, and he decides to listen to his favorite podcast on the way, Just the Facts with J. Jonah Jameson. And as you'd expect, it's filled with spider slander.
And fix my toilet and shut up! Let me explain something to you about crime boss. As soon as one goes down, every punk with a gun, a tracksuit, and a drawer full of gold chains decides he's the next god. We're gonna have a gang war in the streets, but does that whip-headed moron give a damn? Of course not. He got on TV. That's what counts.
But an army of Tony D'Angelos in the street is a problem of the future. Right now, Peter has to talk to Yuri. He asks if she needs a date to the police ball because he's down bad, but everyone knows what police are like with balls.
We don't have balls.
The real reason Yuri called Peter was because she needed some spider tech support after all the Oscorp surveillance towers in the city were disabled, essentially leaving them blind. Cooperating on this mission brings about the return of an old friend.
You're in luck, Yuri. Your favorite tough but lovable, grizzled, seen-too-much detective is in town.
What? No. You promised you wouldn't do that
Spider Cop.
Please, no.
From his elevated position, Spider Cop spies his destination. A second surveillance tower.
Are you narrating yourself?
What? No, of course not. Chief never did understand Spider Cop. Thought he was a loose cannon.
Already regretting this.
During this mission, we are introduced to quite a few of this game's side missions. As you'd expect, one of them is fixing all of the surveillance towers in the city, which will then reveal the locations of collectible items and other side quests on the map. Another one happens to be one of those collectible items, backpacks that Peter just left webbed up all over the city for no apparent reason. I don't even know how or why he needed all of those backpacks. Each backpack contains a piece of memorabilia related to Peter's peculiar past though, so you could say this side quest is Peter Parker picking a peck of peculiar packs. The third is random crimes that will pop up all around the city, and they have special objectives you have to complete for the Platinum Trophy if you want it. And I actually did Platinum this game, though I won't be going over all of the side missions because I don't want to be here until Christmas of 2023. Peter hears that Otto has stepped out of his lab, and after he's done being distracted with backpacks and pigeons, he swoops in to fix up his torn suit.
Parker! Dr. Octavius, what you got there?
Chinese. If I know you'd be here, I would have... What are you working on?
Oh, just a side project.
Of course. It's you.
I don't know what
Oh,
you're...
come on, Parker, it's obvious.
Let me explain.
I only wish you'd told me sooner.
I wanted to, but I was afraid that if word got out, my family might be in danger.
Huh. Yes. I guess if you design his equipment, you're bound to be a target too.
The genius intellect of Otto Octavius, everybody. With Otto's help, Peter creates a new and improved Spidey suit, which will serve as the main suit of this game. There are a plethora of suits you can unlock in the game through different means, including suits from Homecoming, Infinity War, the Raimi trilogy, and Into the Spider-Verse, though none of them really top this suit for me. After establishing two more side missions in the form of Kingpin hideouts and landmark photography, Peter gets a call from Martin Lee, the very positive party-planning philanthropist running the Feast homeless shelter where Peter's Aunt May works. He arrives at the shelter to celebrate 5 years of Aunt May volunteering there, but has to leave when a silent and alarm is tripped at the Kingpin estate sale. Turns out it was tripped by a group of men in kabuki masks, and I'm sure the Asian influence and the fact that they're speaking an Asian language ties in no way back to the Asian man we just saw who happened to be wearing their color scheme exactly. We get the second instance of Peter's spidey sense just not working as one of the kabuki warriors sneaks up on him, but have no fear, Mary Jane Watson is here, voiced by Laura Bailey, who last appeared on the channel in Uncharted 4, and nothing since. Since this is roughly 8 years into Peter's career as Spider-Man, he and MJ have already been in a relationship and broken up, and that one sentence gives away their entire subplot. We then flash back and play as MJ to explain what she was doing here because apparently it was necessary and she couldn't just say, "I'm a reporter and I was covering the estate sale for one of the most powerful criminals in New York history." There's nothing of importance in MJ's section that we wouldn't find out without it, as it just details her solving a puzzle to find a file about something named Devil's Breath that is somehow tied to Norman Osborn. Expect to hear the phrase "tied to Norman Osborn" quite a lot, and while not the Green Goblin yet, he's still quite Defoe. It should also be mentioned that this game has stealth predator sections not unlike the Batman games, just, you know, more webby. They're also a heck of a lot easier as the game just tells you if you can take them out undetected or not. MJ gets caught by one of the masked men, known as demons, because yeah, have a gameplay section with MJ all about stealth and then have her immediately get caught in the next section of the game. It's nice continuity there, game. The demons manage to escape with the file, and Peter's immediate response to this new unidentified threat in possession of plans for something that made even Kingpin nervous is to go out to eat with his ex. Nice, great responsibility. They have vague, generic post-breakup dialogue until Peter has to leave to attend some business. Spider business! MJ goes to leave as well when...
Love seeing you two together again.
You always were my favorites.
It still hurts. For reference, this game came out just 2 months before Stanley's death in November of 2018. Unlike with Peter and MJ at the moment, at the crime scene, there's a strong electric charge in the air. He easily dispatches Shocker, what a shock, and heads back to Feast to ask Martin Lee about the demon mask he snagged after promising to keep MJ in the loop. Martin should really put that mask on, it matches the rest of his ensemble quite well. The next day, Otto is arming an army veteran when people come in and start clearing the place, telling Otto it's been labeled a safety hazard. Otto says he's going to call the mayor, prompting the arrival of Mr. Mayor himself, the very Robert Redford looking Norman Osborn. Norman says Otto and Peter are free to continue their work at Oscorp, which Otto is vehemently opposed to. They'll reveal why later, but all you need to know is that there's bad blood between them and Otto no longer has his grant from the city. Here's a shocking development. Shocker was broken out of prison already and is currently robbing a bank. During the fight, Shocker reveals that he's being forced to commit these crimes by a group of men in masks. And it's a good thing this game doesn't take place in 2020 or 2021, because then that would narrow the suspects down to like 85% of the population. Yuri then contacts Pete about some activity going down at one of Kingpin's ports and gets some assistance from Officer Jefferson Davis to unearth an armory raided by the demons. Peter gives chase to them, ending with Jefferson getting into a car crash but surviving with minor injuries. Thank you for your service, Jefferson. You sure were here. Your reward for being here is an ambulance ride with Mary Jane, on a high after being given free rein by the Daily Bugle to investigate the demons. Peter's evicted from his apartment for never paying rent, but maybe they'd get their rent if they fixed that damn door! His relocation efforts are interrupted by Black Cat, voiced by Erica Lindbeck, voice of Cassie Cage, Kotoka Utsugi, and Futaba Sakura. So, range. Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, who is definitely not at all an exact copy of Catwoman, sets up yet another side mission, though she is much more important in the City That Never Sleeps DLC stories. With nowhere to go, Peter spends the night in Aunt May's office, and the fact that the Amazing Spider-Man has to sleep on the couch in his aunt's office is not at all incredibly funny. Peter gets hung up with helping Fisk's men take out some demons and then stop a helicopter, which is witnessed by Jefferson Davis' son, Miles. Speaking of Jefferson, he is awarded at a re-election event for Norman Osborn, and then is promptly blown to shit by a group of photo-negative bombermen being led by the only important Asian guy in the story who had been wearing the same color scheme as them. Shocker. Looks like Mr. Positive is a lot more negative than we thought. But Martin's photo-negative eyes and friends aren't just for show, as Peter is told Martin has the power to bring out the most negative aspects of people and make them do things they wouldn't normally do. A lead leads Peter to discover that the demon's plan is to attack Norman's campaign offices, and then brings him to another facility that unlocks another side mission, and a queen onto the chessboard that is the post-Fisk New York City.
Nice entrance. Solid 8 out of 10.
This is Silver, head of Sable International, a private security group currently employed by Norman Osborn. And I'm not gonna say it, but we're all thinking it, right? Anyway, Peter heads to Feast to search Martin's office, really making you wonder why that wasn't the first thing he did, where he suggests to Aunt May that Jefferson's son, Miles, could help her around the place. Though, Miles has his mother's last name, so he's not Miles Davis, he's Miles Morales. And I'm sure he won't be relevant to this story going forward. In Lee's office, Peter finds the proof Captain Watanabe had been looking for that connects Martin to the demons, and the Devil's Breath file from earlier. Peter leaves and makes dinner plans with MJ to talk about how all this game's events tie into Mr. Negative, and then it gets a phone call from Otto demanding his presence. Otto has moved on from trying to restore people to what they were, now focusing on making people better, whatever that means. I'm sure we'll find out later, but for now, his test still fails, and he decides to make it up to Peter by telling him about his history with Norman.
I'm half the reason it's called Oscorp. In grad school, everyone called us the O's. Add Corp to that, and, well, it is a catchy name.
Wouldn't it have been pronounced Oscorp then? Anyway, Peter gets the prosthesis to work, and Otto begins working on a neural interface while Peter leaves for his dinner work/date with MJ. She says she found a tracker at the demon hideout location she got from Peter, prompting another MJ gameplay section. I really don't get why these are in the game, they add nothing. Though this one reveals that the supervillain Tombstone is involved with the demons, though that just opens another side quest. They agree to be partners on this whole Devil's Breath business, even though they have been this whole time, and their half-awkward, half-romantic conversation is interrupted when a break-in is reported at the house of Oscorp's CFO, leading to one of my favorite cutscenes in the game.
Oh, Oscorp CFO. Wait, you don't think this has anything to do with Lee, do you?
Sorry to cook and run.
Did you just leave your clothes on the kitchen floor?
Where do you want me to,
Just the couch is fine.
see you later?
Yeah.
That's peak Spider-Man right there. He saves the CFO and learns that the demons were looking into a doctor named Isaac Delaney, giving him the lead to go off of. MJ tracks Delaney to a college Halloween party, and the human spider finds way too many people dressed as superpowered terrorists for my liking. Also, Dr. Delaney is dressed as the Lizard, though the Lizard doesn't exist yet, because we see Kurt Connors later in the game. The punishment for this anachronism is death, and Mr. Negative is all too happy to play executioner, but not before getting the name of Dr. Morgan Michaels. Morgan is currently being held by Sable International, though Silver Sable won't give an exact location. Yes, Silver, head of Sable International, is codenamed Silver Sable. I mean, I don't see any problem with that. She fits right in with Donald Trump, Elon Tesla, and Jeff Amazon. Speaking of rich CEOs who sleep on more money than I've ever owned in my entire life combined, Peter breaks into Norman Osborn's office to find information on Morgan Michaels and finds that he's the lead researcher behind Devil's Breath, an incomplete serum designed with the intention of curing any genetic disorder. But this form is more like a terribly lethal and infectious virus. So basically, the opposite of Omicron. And Dr. Michaels keeps the only sample with him at all times. Pete realizes that the Oscorp CFO from earlier is his best bet at finding Morgan, and MJ just so happens to be sneaking into the facility that he's in. She learns that Morgan is being held in the Bowery and that the demons want something out of Grand Central Station, though Spider-Dick accidentally knocks his ass out before he can finish. Speaking of finish, Otto has finished the neural interface, so Peter returns to the lab for the trial run.
I'd call that a mild success.
We also find why he's so desperate and determined to get this to work.
My doctors call it a degenerative neurological disorder. Probably caused by overexposure to toxic chemicals in my reckless youth.
Sorry, is there anything I can do?
You already are. The worst part is, it only affects the muscles. The mind continues to work, but
Like I said, comic book scientists are required by the laws of the universe to be desperate and or dying. But enough about some aging white dude, it's time to focus on the exaggerated mugging of a black teen. Peter gives Miles some fighting tips and gets punched in the fucking face for his efforts, and control switches to Miles as he crosses a Sable International checkpoint instead of just going around, because the game needs to show how much of a cool, awesome hacker Miles is, and then helps people around feast on his first day. And while Miles does that, Spider-Man chases and fights atop a massive armored vehicle that the demons and Mr. Negative used to kidnap Dr. Michaels and the Devil's Breath while being shot at by Sable International. So, you know, equally as interesting. He eventually catches up with Negative, but gets negativized? Inverted into a strange dream state where Martin tries to convince Peter that he is justified and that Norman Osborn is evil, leading to what really feels and looks like a final boss fight, but it isn't, as the APC crashes and Martin escapes with the Devil's Breath, and Peter gets chastised by Silver Sable as a result.
And it should be me!
Still not gonna say it. And he uses one of Yuri's leads to switch over to MJ. Aw man, don't you guys just love Marvel Spider-Man, Mary Jane Watson, and Miles Morales released for the PlayStation 4? MJ is at Grand Central Terminal trying to find what the demons are looking for, and wouldn't you know it, it's a mass dispersal device just sitting on display. The demons show up and Martin Lee just forgoes the whole photo negative thing before summoning Norman Osborn to the terminal and loading up the Devil's Breath. Things get a bit more fun when Spider-Man shows up and MJ has to lure enemies into place for him to take them out undetected, and then things get a bit too close to Iris West territory for my liking when MJ diffuses the Beelzebub breath bomb, though it isn't too bad since super genius Peter Parker is guiding her through it. And speaking of the spectacular super scientist, he now has free reign to take out the rest of the Finn Balors and chase Martin Lee onto the subway for a much more anticlimactic final fight. And after it's over, Peter tries to Spider-Man 2.
That totally worked last time.
Silly Peter, nothing for Spider-Man 2 would ever exist in this game.
it's time to show the world what we've done.
Ah, crap. Well, at least there isn't like a 98% chance that the neural interface will permanently alter his personality or mood or anything like that, so we're good.
Liar!
Yep, we're screwed. But while we're talking about a Disney-owned property here, roll the clip.
This is where the fun begins.
You thought it was over with the defeat of Mr. Negative? Nah, they've been building up the real final boss in the background this whole time. Things go from bad to worse when the Devil's Breath is stolen from his transport vehicle, and then from worse to worser when a coordinated prison break begins at Rikers. From worser to worserer when Electro breaks out of the raft, the Supermax prison for the big bads. From worserer to worserer when Rhino and Scorpion break out. From worserer to worserer when Vulture and Mr. Negative break out as well, and then finally from worserer to worst.
First and final word.
And now the transformation is fully complete. Dr. Otto Octavius has become Dr. Octopus. Wait, did I say things were at their worst? I lied. "24 hours later, and people are wearing masks and a citywide quarantine is in effect. The halcyon days of 2018 when stuff like that happening in the modern day only existed in fiction. Just remember, kids, as bad as things may seem, they can always get worse. And now, Norman Osborn has blamed the prison break and virus outbreak on Spider-Man, branded him a fugitive, and made him Sable International's priority target. What follows is Spider-Man being pulled in as many different directions as possible as a league of supervillains fuck up whatever they want, on top of the regular escaped convicts causing mayhem, and Peter having to come to terms with the fact that his former boss and idol is now a star-craving madman dead set on destroying the mayor and doesn't care who or what he has to obliterate to do it. Pete also learns that Otto has tasked all of the supervillains with targeting specific Oscorp properties, including Martin Lee stealing the Devil's Breath anti-serum using something called Icarus. But a pit forms in Pete's stomach when Otto says through Zoom call that it was just a kid, Icarus isn't real. Just a distraction to fuck Peter up. Again tonight he will go soaring through the sky as his enemies try to dish him up in a stir-fry. But gracious God, Stan Lee watches from up above, and this nighttime he'll save the day with love. To any of you who get that reference, you are the arrow of light that pierces the heart of darkness. To those of you who don't, come back around this time next year. Okay, one more. Peter has to take out both Thanatos and Phosphora in an electrifying double boss fight. With Michael Keaton and Jamie Foxx down, Peter turns his attention to Scorpion, who hasn't appeared in a movie, so I can continue the joke. Did he appear in No Way Home? I don't know, this script was written before the movie came out. Like, comment, and subscribe if Scorpion appeared in No Way Home. Scorpion hits Peter with the Scarecrow City of Fear and then the Ra's al Ghul Demon Trials while Miles sneaks around a relief center to evade Rhino and retrieve some medicine. Those two worlds then collide at another relief center as Peter takes them down in another 2-on-1 handicap match. In order to find Norman's secret anti-serum lab, MJ sneaks into his penthouse and finds a lot more than just that. She finds that Norman's son and her and Peter's best friend, Harry Osborn, has the same lethal genetic disorder that killed Harry's mother, and that he's been sent somewhere for a special treatment. Norman developed Devil's Breath with the intent of curing Harry of the disorder, and Martin Lee was one of the earliest people they tested a version of the serum on. Pete swings over to the secret lab and, with the help of Silver Sable, secures the area long enough to once again fight Mr. Negative, though his attempt to retrieve the anti-serum is thwarted by Dr. Octopus, who treats Peter like he was bitten by a radioactive rag doll, and then escapes with the anti-serum and Norman. Silver Sable saves Peter and brings him, per his request, to feast. He wakes up later and sees that May has gotten deathly sick with the Devil's Breath virus and could die at any moment. Pete knows he has to find a way to stop Otto, and MJ gives him encouragement by saying the thing.
Go get him, Tiger.
Oh, also, Miles gets bitten by a spider that hitched a ride on MJ's jacket from Norman's secret penthouse lab. Silver Sable calls Spider-Man and tells him that his heroics have caused her to question her life choices, a bit dramatic, but okay, and that she will be leaving New York, though Sable International will be staying. Aw man, can it be the other way around? Luckily for people like me, she's a main focus of the City That Never Sleeps DLC that I won't be talking about because, unlike the city, I do sleep. Peter once again heads into Otto's lab and uses the blueprints for the Dr. Octopus tentacles to create a special suit designed to counter the Mad Doctor, bringing us to the final fight of the game as the two former partners battle it out atop Oscorp. This fight is fun and all, but it needs more emotion.
Such a disappointment. Parker.
You knew?
tried to warn you, Peter, but you didn't listen.
You knew.
There we go. Yeah, I was just kidding earlier, he knew the whole time. But seriously, what a powerful scene. Through everything Doc Ock did, Peter held on to the belief that he could save his friend and that Otto wouldn't be attacking Spider-Man if he knew who he was under the mask. Only to be confronted with the crushing reality that Otto knew the whole time and it didn't make a difference. Otto fries Peter's web shooters, so the final stage of this fight is Peter dodging the tentacles and repeatedly punching Otto in the face. That is, until Otto skewers Peter's shoulder.
To be the kind of man who can make the hardest decisions.
I couldn't agree more.
Doc Ock knows he's defeated, so tries to explain his position to Peter. It doesn't go so well for him.
Mind your conscience, wanting to help others, the way you never gave up.
That's because men like us have a duty, a responsibility, to use our talents in the service of others. Even if they don't appreciate it, we have to do what's best for those beneath us, whether they understand it or not.
No, you're wrong. You are everything I wanted to be. You just threw it away. You do what you think is best, Doc. It's all any of us can.
Peter?
Even when it hurts like hell.
Peter, where are you going? Peter? Peter!
Man, this finale hits way harder than I was expecting. Speaking of hard hits, after Otto is taken away, Peter brings the anti-serum to Feast and learns that there's no way to save both Aunt May and the citizens of New York. It's one or the other.
Take off your mask. I want to see our nephew.
You knew?
I've known for a while.
I never wanted you to worry.
I did. And I am so proud of you. And Ben would be too.
We didn't see Uncle Ben die, so I guess we had to see Aunt May die to balance the scales. But it's not all bad for Peter, as we flash forward 3 months to see him and MJ get back together, and the credits roll. There's also 2 post-credit scenes because this is a Marvel property post-2008. The first one shows Miles revealing to Peter that he now has spider powers, and Peter returning the favor. The second, though, is a lot more interesting.
We were so close. But I'll keep trying. I will find a cure. I will. I love you, son.
I have really mixed feelings about a lot of this game. There are certain aspects of it that I absolutely love to death, and others that I don't care for all that much. For example, I love everything that happens between Peter and Otto, how it builds in the background and you see how this nice, caring, and well-intending scientist turns into one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains through a string of bad luck, bad timing, and desperation. However, I don't like what goes on while it's building in the back. Like, of all the villains they could have gone with, they chose Mr. Negative negative as the main villain for 3/4 of the game. With such great designs and characters for Electro, Vulture, Rhino, and Scorpion, I would have much preferred to have seen one of them in that role. I didn't think the whole demons thing was really that interesting, and a lot of that comes down to their vaguely defined powers. I was more interested in the reaction of the city toward them, as mostly represented by Sable International. I have never read a Spider-Man comic in my life, so I can't speak to the comic accuracy of any of the characters, but I love this interpretation of Peter Parker. He balances humor with seriousness, and you can easily see how Spider-Man is much more confident than the man behind the mask is. I also really liked the character of Norman Osborn. He isn't just a generic lying politician. They show you why he's doing what he's doing and get you to understand that he has good intentions. He just wants to save his son. He's far from a perfect man, but he's not all evil. William Salyers also did a fantastic job as Otto Octavius, and actually got me to forget that he voiced a talking raccoon that defined my childhood.
Ham boning.
And while the performances for Miles and MJ were also great, I didn't like their characters as much. Miles is barely in the fucking thing, and MJ feels very generic. The gameplay is, no pun intended, amazing, and a great remodeling of the Arkham combat system to fit Spider-Man. In fact, this game may have the best copy of the Arkham combat that doesn't feel like a total ripoff. My biggest complaint with the gameplay is that the city of New York feels kinda empty. This is always a hard balance for open world games to strike, as you want to have a big city, but enough memorable interiors to make it feel full. Sure, there's a bunch of collectibles, side missions, and random citizen dialogue, but 99% of the buildings just feel like empty shells. If it isn't Feast, Oscorp, or Otto's Lab, then it really doesn't matter. Overall, Marvel's Spider-Man gets a 7 out of 10. A very fun game and the most accurate and authentic Spider-Man experience you will probably ever have, with a very solid narrative, though certain aspects could have been done a lot better in my opinion. Oh, but the fun isn't over there yet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime doubleheader, so let's waste no time and dive into Spider-Man Miles Morales, released for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Although, let's skip the spinning rims, we're on the clock. If you've seen Into the Spider-Verse, this game follows the same basic premise. Miles Morales is left as Spider-Man after the Peter Parker Spider-Man is gone, though this time he's in a foreign country with MJ, and Miles has to learn how to be his own Spider-Man instead of trying to compare to Peter's Spider-Man. Also, replace all of the cool multiverse stuff with the words Roxxon, New Form, and Underground, and voila! You've got this game's entire plot. The game begins with the Spider-Man taking down Rhino after he escapes from a prison transport, where Miles gets access to a weird bioelectric power that he names Venom. In a Spider-Man property, Spider-Man, whose nemesis is named Venom, who has no relation whatsoever to bioelectricity. Anyway, Supersuit, Danicast, Exaggerated Swagger, Underground Breakin' at Roxxon Plaza, home of the New Form Energy, promise to cleanly power New York and the world, and it's Christmas party time! Oh, didn't I mention that this video also acts as my Christmas special? 2 for 1, baby! This very strange festive ensemble consists of Miles himself, his mother Rio, his best friend Genki, and his childhood friend that he hasn't seen in years, Finn. And I'm sure the fact that super tech genius Finn is just being reintroduced to Miles' life right after he faced a group of super tech gang members is in no way related. Psych! Finn's totally the Tinkerer, and she wants to use New Form to destroy Roxxon Plaza because her brother was a head researcher there, and the New Form experiments poisoned him, and he was then killed by Roxxon CEO Simon Krieger. Krieger is basically Norman Osborn if all the subtlety and nuance to his character was stripped away. With the Underground's war against Roxxon heating up, Miles decides it's time for a new suit, because black and red is definitely the color scheme you want when trying to be sneaky on a snowy day. Also, Miles' uncle is the Prowler. You know, like that reveal that happened in the movie too. I wasn't lying, this game is almost an exact retelling of that movie if all the cool shit was taken out. The Prowler tells Miles he should infiltrate the Underground by telling Finn he wants to join so that he can easily steal the New Form, and against his better judgment, he does. And the plan works for about 5 seconds before he gets into a fight with the Tinkerer that spills into the city, and ends with a line no superhero should ever say under any circumstances, no exceptions.
My mom would be very upset.
Their friendship is obviously strange from this, though they're forced to work together when a Roxxon-enhanced Rhino captures them. Miles finds out that his uncle is working for Krieger, and then he and Finn take down the Roxxon Rhino together. And then Finn immediately betrays Miles because villains got a villain. Miles returns home where his mom finds out he's Spider-Man, and she agrees to evacuate Harlem since Krieger has altered the reactor Finn plans to use to blow up Roxxon Plaza. Now, if her plan succeeds, she'll destroy all of Harlem. Miles is determined to stop Finn, but the Prowler isn't too keen on that idea. He incapacitates Miles and locks him up underground for his own safety, though Miles escapes, and we get what is probably the best boss fight across both of these games. At the very least, it's tied with the Octavius fight. It ends with Miles victorious, and the two of them coming to an understanding that Miles isn't the type of person to run from danger. He's more the type of person to say what's up to danger. Also, I'd like to mention that the reward for completing all of the side quests in this game is the best suit in the whole game, and a very heavy-handed dose of modern political commentary. I don't disagree with that statement, but you know, the whole I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they won't be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character thing. And I know politics have been intertwined with comics since the dawn of time, but with how fucking ever-present politics is in literally everything, I really just hate all of it. But anyway, it's finale time as Miles and Finn fight at Roxxon Plaza after Finn's unintentional Harlem reconstruction plan goes into effect. Eventually, she realizes that she is going to cause way more harm than she intended, and after Miles absorbs the energy of the Nuform reactor, she carries him into the air where he can safely release the energy, sacrificing herself in the process. Though, why couldn't she just throw him in the air at that point and get out of range? Whatever, this game was basically just a PlayStation 5 tech demo anyway. Also, we get another post-credit scene.
He's been in there long enough.
Mr. Osborn, I understand he's your son, but his disease could...
Kurt.
But we may be underestimating the potential danger.
I said, get him out! Now!
And now, we're done for real. Why does this game exist? Like, did it really need to? This game's been out for just over a year and still costs $50. That's only $10 less than the original game at launch, and you only get like a fourth of the content. Yeah, it develops Miles' character and establishes what makes him different from Peter, but couldn't that just have been done in the sequel? My best guess is that they were already bringing in Venom, Kraven the Hunter, the Lizard, and probably Green Goblin into the sequel and thought they wouldn't have room for Miles. Like I said earlier, this game feels like a PlayStation 5 tech demo above all else, showing off all the new features like ray tracing and haptic feedback. And while it does add to the experience, that awe eventually wears off and you're left with a painfully average game that tells the exact same story as the first, with a whole lot of the intricacies taken out. Also, that Peter Parker redesign. Yikes. Spider-Man Miles Morales gets a 5 out of 10. The game looks amazing and the gameplay is just as fun as it was before, but its story feels way too similar, and coupled with the fact that it's much shorter means it is not worth that $50 price tag. And now we're done with Spider-Man until the sequel comes out in 2 years. And speaking of years, I'll be taking a break next week for Christmas and coming back in full force on New Year's Eve. So in the meantime, ask yourself this: what would you do if on New Year's Eve that clock struck 12 and then entered hour 13? I hope to see you there.